Another key principle in Catholic moral theology, the principle of legitimate cooperation, applies whenever an act we are considering would assist someone else in performing a morally evil act. Now, if you think about it, we're put in this situation a lot. People pay taxes and for products to governments and companies whose policies we may not always support. Like the principle of double effect, I think, this principle is basically a further elaboration and clarification of Catholic action theory, of what it means for an object, intention, and circumstances to be all good. And before I summarize what the principle is in a sentence, we need to understand the following different types of cooperation, which I've written on the board. Formal cooperation. Okay, so this occurs when you approve of the other person's evil act. For example, his evil object and/or his evil intent. This could involve actually partaking in the other person's act, but also just approving it, whether vocally or even via silence, not speaking up when you should. For example, your friend says he's going to rob a bank in order to get money to buy illegal drugs, and you go ahead and help him do so. Or you just sit back and say, that's a great idea. Right? In both of these instances, you're formally cooperating. When is formal cooperation morally permissible? Well, according to Catholic moral theology, never. Why? Well, the rationale seems to be you are sharing in that other person's bad object and/or bad intent, because you're approving of it. And that means your own whole act is bad. Material cooperation occurs when you do not approve of the other person's evil act, but you still cooperate in some way. And there are two types of material cooperation. Immediate material cooperation occurs, as you see, again, when you don't approve of the evil, but you still cooperate in it in an essential or necessary way. In other words, the other person's act could not occur without your participation. Here's an example of this. You have that friend who's planning to rob a bank, and you tell him in no uncertain terms, I do not approve of what you're doing. But then you still go ahead and agree to drive him to the bank anyway. Okay, if you actually did this for some strange reason, that would be immediate material cooperation. And when is immediate material cooperation morally permissible? Never. Why? Well, I think the idea here seems to be that your support is so tied up with what the other person is doing, you're driving him to the bank, for example, that your own object is bad, which means your entire act is bad. Mediate material cooperation, on the other hand, is when you participate in a way that is not essential or necessary to the commission of an evil act. In other words, the other person's act could occur without your participation. So for example, you pay your taxes, and a very small percentage of that goes to pay for, I imagine, for a particular government policy you don't agree with, right? Probably just about everyone has an example of some government policy they don't agree with. When is mediate material cooperation morally permissible? Well, this one can be, but if and only if a couple of criteria are met. First, there must be a proportionately serious reason for lending such assistance. For example, there's really a sense of necessity for your cooperation. And also, you must avoid scandal. What's scandal? Well, that's something that you do that causes another person to think or do evil. So for example, a parent telling his or her child to do drugs, or a priest or someone else abusing a small child. The idea is these things could actually cause the kid to do drugs or drive the child away from faith. And that's, by the way, where the Catholic sexual abuse scandal got its name. So the idea is that when one or both of these criteria are failed, you don't have a very good reason, and you may be causing scandal. The idea is that the circumstances of your act, including the effects, are bad. And so your entire act is bad. You've driven someone away from faith, or you've caused them to do evil. You don't have a good enough reason. The circumstances are no good. But when you pass both of these criteria, you do have a very good reason, and you're not really causing scandal, then it seems your object, intention, and circumstances are all fine. And so in that case, the entire act is morally permissible. Now that's a lot to handle for now, so to sort of help you digest this principle, let's do a couple of examples. Example number 1. Take a physician who engages in assisted suicide. Okay? In other words, the physician knowingly and freely gives a patient a lethal prescription of pills to help him or her commit suicide. What kind of cooperation is the physician engaging in here?
Formal cooperation.
Okay. And is formal cooperation morally permissible? Okay, everybody's shaking their head no. That's right. Okay, this would be formal cooperation, not morally permissible. Example 2. Your friend wants to buy drugs, but he doesn't have the money to do so, and no one else will give him any. You don't believe in taking drugs, of course, but you give him some money to get him off your back. What kind of cooperation do we have here? Can anybody tell me?
That would be immediate material cooperation.
That's correct. That's immediate material cooperation. Your participation is essential to your friend's buying drugs. Is that permissible? No. Okay, right. Remember, that's always morally prohibited. Example number 3. You're a Catholic janitor who works at an abortion facility after hours. This job supports your family with several children, although you're able to find other employment. Also, other people know the nature of your job, but you stay mum about your own views on abortion. What kind of cooperation do we have here? Maybe this one's a little trickier.
There'd probably be immediate material cooperation.
That's right. That's immediate material. Okay, does everybody see that? Your participation is not really essential to the commission of the abortion. The clinic could find someone else to clean and could technically proceed with the abortion, I suppose, even if the facility was not being cleaned. So we have immediate material cooperation. Is it morally permissible under these circumstances? Have we met these criteria? Okay. Can somebody tell me why? I guess we'll go back to our initial volunteer here.
You could probably find employment somewhere else, as well as there's probably some sort of scandal involved.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, you fail both of those criteria according to Catholic teaching. Even if you just failed one, the act would be no good. But in this case, we failed both. You don't have a good enough reason. Presumably, you can find another job, and you may well be causing scandal. In other words, other people might assume you don't have a problem with abortion as a Catholic because you're working as a janitor at an abortion facility. And that may lead them thinking that maybe abortion is okay. Okay, one final example. Same Catholic janitor, although let's say for sake of argument that person is unable to find other employment, and that person is also vocal about his or her own personal opposition to abortion. What kind of cooperation do we have here? Okay, in the front.
That'd probably be immediate material cooperation again.
Okay. And would it be morally permissible in this situation according to those criteria? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I think it would because he can't find another job, and he's also telling people that he doesn't agree with abortion.
Okay. That's right. The idea is there's a proportionally serious reason and the person's avoiding scandal. Okay. Actually, some of the examples I just gave are kind of common ones in textbooks on Catholic medical ethics. So Catholic moral theologians tend to agree that that last example, and I guess only that last example, would be permissible. So in a nutshell then, so here's the payoff. In a nutshell, in a sentence, the principle of legitimate cooperation states that for an act of cooperation with an evil act to be morally legitimate, morally permissible, it must be mediate material cooperation, there must be a proportionately serious reason for it, and scandal must be avoided.
What about in a hostage situation?
Okay, you're talking about a form of material cooperation there?
Right, like if a lady was held at gunpoint and said, hey, you need to rob a bank for me, would she be responsible for that?
Okay, yeah, excellent question. I think, if I understand you correctly, that would be maybe a form of immediate material cooperation. In other words, the person being held at gunpoint is their cooperation is literally essential, right? They're really carrying out the robbing of the bank. On the other hand, and this is very important, they're being forced to do so. So in that case, and in other cases of immediate material cooperation for that matter, when a person's forced to do something against their will, the action itself, the object, is still technically bad. It's subjectively bad. But this is an example where circumstances can decrease a person's responsibility for the act. And I think in that case, if someone's literally being held at gunpoint, the circumstances are such that it could decrease their responsibility to practically zero. Okay, so again, in that case, the act is still objectively bad, but the person is off the hook. They're not morally responsible for it. Okay.
So how does this principle with the mediate material cooperation apply to the current healthcare mandate that we're facing, especially cover contraception and abortion-inducing drugs?
That's a very complicated question. Let me just say this. I don't want to answer it directly, but I hope I'm not copping out. That's something that the United States Catholic bishops are currently working through. And Cardinal Timothy Dolan has kind of made some statements on the record expressing some reservation about the contraceptive mandate and people being forced to cooperate with that. But he hasn't really articulated yet, the bishops haven't articulated yet, what exact form of cooperation that would be. It seems that he and the other bishops are leaning in the direction right now that it's morally impermissible, maybe one of these more morally impermissible forms of cooperation, but that still remains to be seen. Maybe by the time this video finally hits the web, we'll have an answer.
I have a question about the double effect principle. I know in one of my business ethics classes we had talked about in the case that a mother is pregnant, I don't think it matters how far along she is, but she finds out that she has a cancerous uterus. Is it okay to kill the child in a way to save the mother?
Yeah, so that's an issue that maybe falls a little bit more under the fifth commandment according to Catholic teaching, thou shalt not kill, which covers abortion. But yeah, we can certainly talk about it here. Oh, I'm over here, principle of double effect. My understanding is that Catholic moral theology holds that in cases of indirect abortion, such as removing a cancerous uterus, that's permissible. And so, yeah, the idea would be, I guess, that it would pass these criteria. Maybe we can go through them real quickly. So what's the object of the act? Well, removing the cancerous uterus. Is that bad in itself? No. Second, does the mother desire the good effect? The good effect is being cured of the cancer, right? Yes, presumably. And not desire the bad effects? Well, hopefully, yeah, as long as the mother doesn't desire the bad effect of ending the life of the unborn child, then we've passed this criterion. Third, the bad effects, do they cause the good effects? Well, no, the death of the unborn doesn't directly cause the curing of the cancer. It's the removal of the cancerous uterus that's doing that. And finally, fourth, are the good effects equal to or outweigh the bad ones? Well, Catholic moral theology would hold that yes, you're curing the woman of cancer. That's at least equal to the bad ones, I suppose the idea is here. The unborn maybe, unfortunately, is going to die no matter what. So in cases of that, another example that you may have heard of is ectopic pregnancy. Catholic moral theology would hold that that's an example of indirect abortion, and it's permissible that it would pass these four criteria.